everyone. Welcome to our podcast. This week's episode is about the art of networking. We thought this topic would be relevant to recent graduates who are looking for their first full-time job. While job searching can be very stressful, having the right tools and strategy can make success easy. Today's guest is Robert Braathe, probably mispronounced it, the founder of Braathe Enterprises. He serves as a business trainer and leader of the career services station, BEYourStart, and Tempo Business Training. Mr. Braathe received his MBA from Western Connecticut State University and his Bachelor of Arts in Hospitality from the University of Massachusetts. In addition, he's taken his PhD from the University of Albany, or he's taken PhD level courses, and Northcentral University. After working in management positions with Walt Disney World, Gap, and Apple, he founded his own company in October 2005. He also teaches at the College of St. Rose and several other community colleges and private colleges in courses that include hospitality, management, marketing, and entrepreneurship. Welcome to our podcast, Breathe In, Right Out, Robert.
Thanks, Lisa. Great to be here.
So you've had kind of an interesting educational and career background. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your own journey?
Sure. In college, I thought I was going to be the Disney guy. I did some internships and spent the first 5 years of my career there, and quickly discovered that I really missed the Northeast too much, moved back up here. But while I'm there, I was there in Florida. That's where the networking began. I met some people who later on in my career helped me land that next job. And throughout my career since then, whether it was Gap, Disney, Apple, or owning my business or teaching, it's been those networking relationships I've formed that have helped me be a great success in my career.
Okay. I think maybe the first time we met on kind of a networking app, actually, and we were having a conversation. And I remember I believe you were talking to me or telling me something about the importance of networking, and that this is something students often don't understand or get. They're focused a lot on their grades, their coursework, and not the art of networking. And I think even as a student, I remember you kind of had a knack for that a little bit. Do you want to reflect on that? Maybe tell us a little bit about, even as a student, how you realized the importance of networking?
Sure. This saying just came to me now, but I think it's always been my approach. It's not about the GPA, it's about the GPS. It's where you take your journeys to and where you make some stops along the way. So right in college, I started a little bit later than your typical college student. I was 21 before I went away to school. I had done some community college work, but in school, as I was a little bit older, I made sure that I could relate to everybody, whether it be the faculty, getting to know the people at the Career Service Center, and getting to know the students. I could relate to the underclassmen. I could relate to the graduate students because I was kind of in that middle of the road spot where I was, had about 2 or 3 years on everybody in my class. But really, it was that was the difference maker for me. Was I wasn't the greatest student, but I knew how to talk my way through things, and I knew how to develop relationships. Where a lot of my peers with the 4 O's didn't have a 4.0 in life. That's for sure.
Yeah. So for those kids who are really, academically strong, but they're maybe struggling in the networking, what are some concrete things you did at that time that helped you to build those relationships?
I think it starts with realizing there's no such thing as a closed door. I know I would go to career fairs, and sometimes I would just go to tables that maybe were companies beyond my expertise. They might have been looking for somebody with more experience, but establishing a rapport. And I think a lot of people would look for any excuse to avoid people. There was one time there was a snowstorm I showed up. They told me, well, all the interview spots are full, but chances are we're going to have some no-shows. So my friend Jennifer and I, we drove the car to campus. It took an hour to get there. We were the only two people that showed up for interviews, and we got the job. So we look for any excuse whatsoever to meet people, no matter the situation. And I think that was the differentiator, is when you're feeling not social, if you're not feeling up to it, that's the best time to meet people, when you don't want to.
Interesting. Yeah, I think I noticed on your website that you had an article, I think it was by maybe a collaborator, about imposter syndrome. And when you were talking about you would go up to the tables where you thought, well, maybe I'm not qualified, but you went. And I think something a lot of the overachievers, like myself being an overachiever, deal with is that imposter syndrome. So you might actually be qualified, but you don't go approach the table. So what about you, or in that moment, kind of, you just go and do it anyway?
Yeah, I've been labeled the same way, as an overachiever, and I learned quickly to take that as I'm not an overachiever. I've been underestimated, and by having that approach of, look, I have a head and a soul just like everybody else in this room, and I deserve to have this conversation just as much as the next person. And I think overcoming that. I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not attractive enough, whatever the hang up might be for somebody, it really impresses people when you just walk up to them and say, hi, I'm Robert, I'm Lisa, and I'm here to learn from you and see if you're a right fit for me, just like if I'm a right fit for you, because it is a two-way street on the job hunt and with networking. You can walk up to a lot of people who might not see value in you, but the next thing you know, just having that little sidebar conversation leads to a relationship that blooms.
Yeah, cool. So what you mentioned, like I'm not good enough at this and that, whatever. So what, maybe you were naturally good at this, but like, what did you do to sort of combat those voices? Because I know that is something like my students talk to me about in a lot of different circumstances, and that's a lot of what we work through. So what do you do when that pops up?
I always have a game plan when I'm hopefully before I'm even in the building of where I'm having this rapport, or even these days before I even jump on a Zoom call. What are the outcomes I'm looking for? How many people do I want to have a good conversation with? And can I, and I always kind of use the rule of 10. Can I have a conversation with one person that's very valuable, and maybe two others where I can follow up at a later date? And then depending on the size of the group, you can multiply that. But set modest goals. You go into a career fair, there's 30 companies, have conversations with 5, get information from 5 to 10 others. But whatever you can do to start with that big funnel, and then work down from there, because you never know that little table in the corner, or that person who's not speaking up a lot in a Zoom call. Chances are they're just like you, and they're wondering, why am I here today? And so having that plan is important. Okay.
So it sounds like there's 2 really great takeaways. One kind of happened at the end there, when you're like, somebody's there and they look quiet. Instead of interpreting that as like they don't care, or rejection or whatever, but actually understand that, everybody's has these worries, and you're not the only one with the worries. So, everybody's dealing with the same thing. So don't let them kind of overpower you. And then I liked how you said setting those realistic or modest goals, because I think that is something I find students struggle with a lot. Even just talking about writing a research paper, I got to write 12 pages. They're really focused on I got to write 12 pages now in an hour, as opposed to breaking it down into chunks. So I like how you're kind of breaking the job search process or the networking process into chunks. One good connection is valuable. Yes. You don't have to go into a room and think you're going to make 30 connections.
Yeah, it's a process. I like to, when I think about networking tips, one of my new acronyms is you got to start at the cell level, CELL. The first part of that is connect with as many people as you can. I say if you can make a virtual or real connection with 3 people a day, you're meeting 1,000 people a year. From there, engage with people, try to reach out to the people, maybe 25 a day. It sounds like a lot, but you write a common message like, how's the semester going? Things are great here. Would love to catch up sometime. You copy and paste it and send it off. And then my third part of the 3 networking tips, linger and learn, as I like to say, whether that's, you get there early for the virtual or actual event, and you stay late, you end up learning a lot more than you would, because some of those off the cuff conversations lead to a lot. So connect, engage, and linger and learn, the cell level of networking.
That's great. That's really helpful. I guess we kind of talked about this. I was going to ask, what is the best thing you learned as a student to help you on your career journey? And I think you mentioned building relationships. Was there anything else that stuck out?
Yeah, I think a lot of times we look for the big companies, when we're on the job hunt, and we forget that there's so many smaller companies that are out there. So I interviewed with everybody from Friendly's to the U.S. Olympics to Disney to a couple local hotel chains, and you should practice as much as you want, because if these companies want to talk to you, they like you. It's a conversation worth having. So I ended up having some multiple offers to choose from, both for internships and jobs, because I wasn't just looking for one company and it's win or lose. So I remember summer '96, I talked to Friendly's, the U.S. Olympic Committee, Disney, Waterford Hotels, who I happened to work for before. And I think all 4 offered me something. And if I had only talked to one and maybe got a no, I would have been setting myself up for a heartbreak. So I always made sure that if a company came to campus and they seemed like decent people, I'd have the conversation, because you can't say no to a job you haven't been offered yet. Right.
That's great. Yeah, so you're kind of eliminating that black and white thinking.
Yeah.
You're like, it's gray. Mm-hmm. And then, you know what, I love the piece where you said there that it's worth having the conversation, because, what I tell my students, and I know you do some coaching along these lines, is that every interview is a practice, right? So, even maybe in the beginning you interview with Disney and that was your dream job, it doesn't go well. It's a practice. Go to the next one, the next one, the next one. And in the future, you might be able to go back to Disney, like in a couple years or whatever.
Sure.
So I really like that. And earlier you said, it's a fit. It's about finding the right fit. And I think people go into interviews about, they're going to judge me, but you're also judging them.
Mm-hmm.
You also need to figure out, is this a culture? Is this a job that, works for me? So that was really good advice. I know you have a blog. Your blog has a combination of kind of like career tips and also writing tips. And I know that you do some of your services are around resume, helping people to develop resumes and stuff like that. What would you say to a new student? Maybe this is literally their first job. They're just coming out of university. They don't have much experience. Maybe they volunteered or they were in a club. That can be really discouraging. How do they even start putting together a resume?
Sure. And I think a lot of times they worry more about the form and not the function. It's really about, somebody fresh out of college or somebody in college. You've got to really tout your college experience. So I always say, include the names of the courses you've taken that are related to what you want to do. So don't just put your GPA. It should say courses included. Watch out for wackiness. And what I mean by that is Nobody's going to say, well, Lisa, we were going to give you this job, but Marge over here had a serif font and we like that one better. It's never going to happen.
In fact, actually, usually I throw those ones out.
Yeah,
they're
exactly.
too hard for me to read. I'm just like, can't read it, have 10 seconds, bye.
Exactly. So columns, fonts, you want just a clear summary. If you've worked a while, an achievements list, experience, skills, education, and if there's room, throw in some hobbies or clubs. But you definitely want to get involved. I didn't do a lot on campus, but I was part of Future Hoteliers of America. I did a little volunteering. I was on the co-ed volleyball team. But they want to see that you're doing something, and I think that'll help you stand out a little bit more than just. I've even talked to some of my recruiter friends, and they're like, if we see somebody who not only puts their GPA but also puts Dean's List and cum laude, it's like enough already. Put one of them, and that's why I usually like Dean's List, because that's more searchable than a 3.2. Everybody knows what a Dean's List is. The 3.2. You get Jerry over here with a 3.3, they're going to ignore you and look at him.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask you, what do you think about putting GPAs on resumes, and at what point should you stop doing
that? You should stop doing it immediately. That's what I tell people. It's one of those things, if on the job application, they want you to put it down. Like I was looking at a project the other day, and it was the first time where they required the GPA, so I had to go back and look and find mine. But it's one of those non-measurable things by robot resume reviewers, which a lot of these companies use, the applicant tracking systems, or ATS. So Dean's List is searchable, but just a random number like that is not. So I always say, leave it off, because even a 4.0, I had a couple recruiters tell me if we see over a 3.0, there's some jobs we won't hire somebody because we think that we're going to make the wrong assumption that they're too book smart. So it's, if people ask, share it on the application, but leave it off the resume.
Okay, good tip. So you've given us some advice, kind of like preparing the applications. You've given us some advice about networking. You sort of touched on a little bit what you did as a student to make you more employable when you graduate. So I think I'll start with that question. So say, I'm just going into university now, I'm in first year. What sort of things should I be thinking about besides, passing my courses and getting to know people, to be able to come out the other end when I graduate and be able to put together a resume that, would be attractive to employers?
There's a lot of great free tools, and sometimes the professors will use them. I've always used, because my career office when I was in between sophomore and junior year had me do this Princeton Review 5-minute career quiz, which still exists. And I take it every couple of years just to see where I'm at. And what it does is it gives you a list of jobs you'd probably enjoy to help you kind of broaden your search or narrow it. And it also gives you a couple lists of maybe skills or personality traits that you might not even be aware of about yourself. So they suggested, you take it on a full stomach at a good time of day. So you just answer the questions. It's like 24. But any tools like that, Myers-Briggs, a number of these personality instruments, the DISC model. But the more you can find out about yourself early on in college through these proven tests or conversations with your professors or career counselors, the more prepared you'll be as you get closer to that first internship or first job. And I always encourage, I was lucky that I got an internship second semester of my sophomore year, then the summer of my sophomore year, and the summer of my junior year. So I got 3 internships in. So 2 or 3 would be a great idea. And maybe even as soon as your freshman year, sophomore summer, between freshman and sophomore.
So because we're in Canada, that means like first year, second year, third year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or for those people in
we're
Canada.
still on the inches and feet here in America, so we haven't gotten that far with our adapting to how the rest of the world does things. But yeah, first year, between your first and second year, and is a great time to get. And maybe it's not that glamorous, but do an internship anywhere, just so you have that at 19 years old. You've already got your first professional experience somewhere, even if it's just a short-term 60 or 90-day experience.
Okay, cool. And so learn a lot about yourself, go to the career center, wherever you can, the library, I don't know, get these tools. Try to apply for internships. What about like during the school year? You mentioned like you played volleyball or different things. How did these extracurricular activities help in the end when you're finished like 4 years?
Mm-hmm. It's short term. It kind of helps you get your mind off of the stresses of school. But long term, it shows that you're just not glued to the books or the computer. The fact that you get out of the house and sweat a little bit, or that you roll your sleeves up and help somebody that needs the help, or do some other type of club affiliation where you're meeting people and having relationships in a low stress situation. It shows that you can get along with people and you're not operating on an island. And as much as I consider myself an introvert, those three things were things I always look back on: the club membership, the intramural sport, and having some sort of volunteer work, because I wasn't doing it alone. There were others involved in the work, and that helped me with the relationship piece.
Mm-hmm. And later, as you progressed through your career, did you maintain those relationships, and did that help with career development later on at all?
Not so much. I'm quite amazed that most of the relationships I formed in college were with the faculty and with people that I did an internship with versus anything I did on campus. But the tools and the things I learned during those times stuck with me. So even though the faces have changed and the people have changed, it's almost like practice for relocating. You're going to meet a whole different peer group. But by learning, all right, this is how I acted in a volunteer group at UMass, and this is how I acted one in South Florida or Central Florida when I was there, and in New York where I am now. So that's something important to remember is, we're going to have people coming in and out of our lives, but the more we, like I had a former colleague who was my activity partner, and we went to dinner together. They were the logic behind my business. And when she went off to law school, I found 3 different people to fill that role. So I think as we meet people in life, we realize that it doesn't always matter who the faces are, who the people are, but making sure that those roles that we need in our life continue when somebody passes on or somebody moves out of our life.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess that's why you want to always be connecting with new people. But do you have any advice for the students right now? Maybe like now in the midst of I don't know what it's like in New York, but we're still kind of in a pandemic here, graduating, it seems bleak. What advice or, I don't know, encouragement do you have for them?
Well, from my experience, obviously we've had a lot of people suffer and pass from COVID, but those of us who have been blessed to be able to get through this all in mentally one piece, it's been a remarkable phoenix rising from the ashes, if you will, for those of us who have just had to piece it together. So being that I've always been comfortable with the remote connections and conversations, we met on Lunch Club, and you're in Canada and I'm in here, and I've met with people all over the world. So pre-pandemic even, I was connecting with people on LinkedIn. A lot of my business comes from that. I was participating in virtual events even pre-pandemic. Yeah. So to me, I did miss the personal piece, but you find ways to replace that in the meantime. So, and I think the comfort with not having to be in the same room with people. At Disney, we had this ride, Spaceship Earth, where part of it, they spoke about physical distance is no longer a barrier to communication. And this was 25 years ago on that ride. So I think it's taken a while for that to take hold. But now the best advice I have for current students is just because somebody isn't in the same room as you doesn't mean you can't develop a rapport and a relationship and a collegiality. There's been people I've seen in person for maybe a total of 6 hours. Like my friend Rebecca, we went to a concert together, we had dinner together, and we've had 2 coffees in Nashville. So about a total of 8 hours of our life. But the phone, the internet, Skype keeps that rapport going. And I think the more, whether it's personal, business, or academic, making sure that just because you're sitting at home and maybe you have a dress shirt on and shorts doesn't mean you shouldn't be giving. I have jeans on, but doesn't mean you shouldn't give that person attention like you're right there in front of them. And I think that's a missed opportunity for a lot of today's students. That, well, I had a student tell me the other day, they said something like, well, I'm not getting the value out of school because I'm sitting at home. I'm like, how is that any less value? It's a perk to get a high quality live education, and you don't have to sit around somebody sneezing in the room with you or somebody distracting you. It's just you and the professor and anybody else who decides to speak up. So, look at this as an opportunity, not an impingement on your life. The fact that we're not roaming about aimlessly like we once did. And I think that there were a lot of people sleepwalking through life prior to this big scare over the last 18 months.
Interesting. Yeah, there was 2 things I thought of while you were talking. I forgot the first one. But when you were talking about the classroom experience. So interestingly, there are a number of students I was coaching and have been coaching during the pandemic, and I never met them in person.
Mm-hmm.
But we had, and then over the summer, because we had a little bit of opening up here, I met one of them in person, and I didn't even realize we had never met in person until she said, "Oh yeah," until I was like, "Wow, this is not, like you. I thought you were taller." She kind of has this big personality.
Yeah.
But yeah, I didn't realize that. And then I have another one. She and another coach. So another coach and I coach her, and we're all gonna meet in person probably in like a couple weeks. But I've been coaching her almost 2 years. And we have like a close relationship. And I think it kind of makes it a little bit more special when you actually get to see the person in person.
Yes.
It's kind of like, wow, this is a moment of connection. So you definitely can connect with people. And then I think another interesting thing, I don't know if you talk to some of your younger clients about this, and I kind of was maybe wondering if you might talk about these opportunities, but like I have my assistant, actually, she graduated, she moved back to China. She still works for me from China. And then she's got another job in China. So I'm going to be taking on a new assistant. Incidentally, we hired someone from Halifax, which is in like the Maine of the US or something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone in Toronto, and I hired someone from Victoria, and I hired someone from, so now I have all this team of people that I wouldn't have access to if it wasn't for the pandemic. And I mean, I'm an employer, so I'm sure other employers are also realizing this. And as a new student, you might actually have more opportunities because you don't necessarily have to move your whole self to try out a job.
Mm-hmm.
You can try it out for 3 months and maybe it's not a good fit, and at least you didn't move across the country
Yeah.
and then have to move back or get paid more. Because if I was in, Western Canada, but I'm working a job in Toronto, I'm getting paid like I'm in Toronto, but my cost of living is lower.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm like in Saskatchewan or something like that. So have you had these kind of conversations with younger people, or even any sort of career clients? Are people's sort of mindsets shifting a little bit about where to look for opportunities?
Oh, yes. At the internship level, my company has offered virtual internships since 2011.
Wow.
And because of that, my company, as well as a company of one of my peers called Super Interns, has just blown up in the last year or two, because so many people were like, well, wait a minute, this bank, this company has canceled our internship. We want to gain experience. So I found freelancers from that. I've developed interns that way. And, I think what employees, interns, and even professional roles have realized, as you pointed out, something I call the great wake up call for civilization, which is, if your life and its value rely on these things, you're in a lot of trouble. And these things are leaving your house, going into somebody else's building, and sitting in their chair demonstrates relevance. That's dead now. Restaurants, schools, offices, movie theaters. If you're any of those businesses and you're relying on people coming to you, going into your building and sitting in a chair for you to declare them a relevant member of society, you're in for a huge wake-up call. And a good example on the job front, I had somebody approach me about something. Half the pay, I'd have to relocate. I'd have to go from my 8-month teaching schedule to a 12-month job, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. But it comes with benefits. Oh, but it comes with 4 weeks vacation. And they throw all these great things that maybe a few years ago were wonderful. But it's like my cost of living would triple. I'd have to go to a building and sitting in a chair. No. So I think a lot of what I've heard out there is, I want to work close to the people I love in a smaller city, a Boston, an Austin, a Nashville, a Columbus, Ohio, even. And I want to know that I don't have to sit in a car for 6 hours a week. So it's changed everything.
Yeah, that's really true. My assistant, actually, now that she's in Beijing, she does have to commute an hour and a half one way. But she's hoping to move closer. And interestingly, she's working for a tech company, but they want her to come into the office.
Wow. Yep. You can't make up stupid as good as life, as one of my favorite sports guys says all the time. You can't invent stupid as good as life. It's funny how these things happen.
Yeah. So interesting. I think quality of life has become more important. And also here in Canada, there's a lot of job openings because a lot of people left their jobs during COVID to start something else, to move away to another place, but especially these jobs that are the ones where you have to go there, like being a server in a restaurant and whatnot. But I think the point I'm trying to make is that there's a perception that COVID, I think it did damage the economy and jobs were lost and whatever, but it also created opportunities. So if you're, smart and you can think a little bit outside of the box, you can find some great opportunities, especially as a young person, and you have, flexibility, you just come out of school, you have fresh ideas, all that kind of stuff.
Indeed.
So I like to talk about books. Obviously I like writing. There are a lot of books behind me. Can you recommend a book or two that you think would be really valuable for students who are just sort of starting their career search or starting their job search?
Yeah, two of them. In college, it was The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. Starts off with number one, be proactive. And I think that's a great book to teach you just how to be a better person when you're approaching things. And then a more modern book, not that that's not modern, it was written in the 80s and 90s, Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. And he's a very successful marketer with hotel businesses and now with his own company. He talks about all the different ways to create opportunities to meet people. And he encouraged people to never eat alone. So try to find a couple days to invite somebody over for coffee, go out for breakfast with somebody instead of lunch or dinner, because breakfast is more affordable and it doesn't interrupt the flow of the day. And how to get events going that you can be a part of, how to take advantage of a great conference without even going to a conference. So between those two books, I refer back to both of them often for just getting back to those fundamentals. Even in the 7 Habits, one of the last habits is sharpen the saw. Just go back and what can I work on a little bit better? And then with the Never Eat Alone book, what are some ways to get those conversations? And to your point earlier about the richer the conversation is, I almost had something in reverse. One of my favorite singers who I've gotten to know over the years, her name is Michelle Branch, and we've met 3 times in person. But just recently, for the relaunch of her new 20th anniversary of her album, she did, you pay a little bit more and you get a one-on-one video call for like 2 minutes. And she gave me like 5.5. But even if it was just 2 minutes, that richness, because it was just the two of us, there wasn't a whole slew of fans behind me waiting. We had probably the best 5.5-minute conversation about music, life, and anything, because we had that rapport from me going backstage and going to shows and whatever. And it was just enriched by this platform allows us to, have those rich conversations without, the outside distractions that can happen when we're in a room full of people. Yeah,
that's really interesting. That's such a good idea. You could have like speed, and I don't know, someone must be doing this, some sort of speed networking. I've done that in person. It's almost like speed dating, but you're at a big table.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to do it on Zoom through breakout rooms. You probably get a better quality conversation, as you said.
Yeah. And I've been a part of some of them where they try that out. Maybe I'll have a 10-minute breakout and then people will come back. And even in my classrooms, I get more out of giving students 10 minutes to talk with 3 or 4 of their peers and then come back and report on it than I ever did getting 4 of them to talk in a classroom to each other, because they're overhearing other conversations. So there's a lot to be said about these micro meetups as part of a larger event or a larger class session that really make the conversations flow, and they have a clear outcomes, which may not happen when you have the, and as much as I'm happy to be back in the classroom, trying to do a breakout room where the 4 people are sitting there with masks on isn't as appealing as having 4 people in a virtual background or a breakout room where they can turn on their cameras. They're all sitting in wherever is comfortable for them and going from there.
Yeah, that's really neat. Really cool. I think, things are going to change. If the big institutions will embrace this, there's a lot of opportunity for education, different ways of learning, and, that fit people's needs. So just as we kind of sign off here, I kind of want to circle back to that internship thing, and maybe you could mention it just kind of as we sign off there. Tell us a little bit about it, because that might be of interest to some young adults. And then how can people find out more about you?
Sure. So our internship program, we call it the BEVIP, which stands for Braathe Enterprises Virtual Internship Program. You can find out about it, Braathe, BRAATHE, enterprises.com/internships. So we offer high school and college students for college credit experience. We've got relationships with over 100 schools, and the students gain real life experience in usually a 4-month, 100 hours in marketing, HR, writing, or finance. So we have different internships, and sometimes they overlap. So we're currently at this time and looking typically in the fall months. We're recruiting for spring, and then later in the fall we recruit for summer. And then to find out more about that's kind of our corporate website. And then for my business itself, that's customer facing, careerservicestation.com. And I'm always happy to connect with anybody and everybody on LinkedIn. You can again search for me, Robert Braathe, Braathe, and I'll probably come up with my headline, I can find you the job you desire and deserve.
Yeah, awesome. And we will put these links on the website post so that you can find them and go directly to Robert's website. So thanks so much for joining us today. I learned a lot. I'm inspired by these, the breakout rooms and the one-on-one. Like, this is making me have some ideas for my own courses. So
excellent.
It was a very fruitful conversation. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. And for everyone else, stay tuned for a short meditation and writing exercise.